Hi, we're Team Death Eaters. My name is Lauren Pike.
I'm Olivia Shapiro.
I'm Molly.
I'm Yazmeen Renova. Sorry.
No, you're good. I'm Molly Linder.
And today we are going to be talking a little bit about our project from Module 1 in this class. So in our class, we were tasked with studying some different types of project management, and our group was specifically tasked with researching a little bit about the Crystal Agile method style. So today we hope to share with you all the things we've learned so that hopefully you can learn a little bit about this method as well.
So to start off, we're going to start with an introduction. The Crystal Agile method was created by Alistair Cockburn. He was both a software engineer and a co-author of the Agile Manifesto. He began noticing that traditional project management methods in place were not always working for current software engineers. Cockburn then created the Crystal family of methodologies. Each methodology was a different approach. The Crystal Agile method emphasizes the importance of communicating, teamwork, and being able to adapt to change. Crystal represents something that is clear, transparent, and takes different shapes. The Crystal Agile method recognizes that different projects may have different requirements. This method can be changed to fit the needs of different people and different projects. And right here on the bottom right is a photo of Cockburn. Moving on to some of the advantages that the Crystal Agile method may have. When using this method, individuals are always getting constant feedback since the project is broken down into pieces and talked about at the end of the section. This allows the team to manage and control each step very well. It also reduces the risk for errors since they are identified very early on. The communication and teamwork are also a huge advantage. Communication and collaboration are essential for project success with this Agile method. There's constant communication all throughout. This method also promotes improvement. Teams are able to reflect on what worked and what did not work. This helps teams create better systems, which in general increases success and better teamwork.
And now for some disadvantages. So lack of predefined plans can lead to scope creep, which is basically changes that are made to the scope of the project without any type of control or procedures, such as making requests to make those changes. The lack of a documentation could also be an issue, and this is mostly due to the emphasis on communication and collaboration, and because this is mostly something implemented in person in small groups. So the lack of documentation can lead to confusion. The lack of structure can also make work slightly inefficient for teams that are especially inexperienced. And limited scalability can also be an issue, as this method is difficult to employ within large projects and large group sizes due to having to manage many different team sizes and just different scale projects. The clarity may also fall short due to the emphasis on self-organization. Industries, and what industries could the Crystal Agile method be used in? First one, fairly obvious, is software and app development. It was primarily developed for software projects, and it's suitable for small/medium-sized teams and that are working on software development with constantly changing requirements. It can also be used in manufacturing. The Crystal Clear method specifically, which we'll touch on later, can be adapted to manage projects in manufacturing industry, particularly when developing new products or implementing processes for improvements. It could also be used in the event management and event planning realm, and in that emphasis, because of the emphasis on collaboration and continuous improvements, the customer involvement can be very valuable in the event management industry. In construction and engineering, although these industries use more of a traditional project management style, the principles of Crystal Clear Agile methods such as regular communication, iterative development, and adapting to changing requirements can be applied in certain projects in the construction and engineering industries. And then last, creative and marketing, places like advertisement agencies, marketing firms, graphic design studios, and other just creative industries like those can work on projects that require a lot of flexibility and adaptability and changes and learning from past, feedback. So with the focus on collaboration and communication, this method could be beneficial to managing those types of projects.
So in terms of examples for this method, there are not a ton. As a matter of fact, there is really only one specific example of a company using the Crystal Agile method, which is IBM's Orange platform. So IBM's Orange platform was developed to help companies maintain compliance and security over their technological devices, such as servers, desktop computers, laptops, and mobile devices. So with that being really the primary example of this method, that is just kind of due to some of the lack of documentation and popularity to other methods. And so that makes specific examples a little more difficult to find than some of the other methods. However, similar to what Olivia was talking about with industries, there are several different app development, smaller kind of teams that use this method. This is because frequent testing and user input allow teams to identify errors a little bit earlier on, and close communication is critical for these types of projects. But again, these are not specific companies with specific things, just because it's typically these smaller companies and smaller teams that use something like this method, so it's not as well documented.
And so going on to how does it vary? So the Crystal Agile method is a very flexible method, and the method is very different because of it being so primarily focused on things like team collaboration and tailoring projects specifically to what teams need. And so that goes on further for people and communication. So the method promotes team interaction and constant communication, as it's been talked about previously in this presentation. And then it also goes on to talk about how, project characteristics are also, it emphasizes that a lot. And this method shows that different projects require a different approach. This method allows teams to structure an outline, basically almost a framework, so that it can fit their team and their process the best. Also, the use of multiple methodologies. So, for example, the crystal clear, crystal orange, crystal yellow, and so on, and they're further broken down. The broken down methods are broken down and chosen based on the project size and the various characteristics that it embodies. Another one is the flexibility and early identification of potential issues, as well as minimal documentation, like what Olivia said. There is a lack of documentation throughout this process, but the method focuses more on like face-to-face communication rather than documentation. So that's not to say that there's no documentation, but the documentation that is gathered is more of like user testimonies and visual representation. Also, there is an emphasis on learning from previous mistakes and the ability to adjust from that. And so this method encourages teams to learn from previous mistakes and further improve the team's process through reflections. And so can it be combined with other methods? And in a nutshell, yes, it can be. The Crystal Agile method is able to be combined with other methods, with there being different kinds of Crystal methodologies. There are also different ways that it can work with other methods. So for example, it can be combined with Scrum by incorporating sprint planning into the framework. And this method can also be used with Kanban by putting things into a Kanban board. So just a little bit on that is that, you have the Kanban board is more of cards or sticky notes that visually represent different things. And that's how the crystal works in conjunction with that. And just like a fun little fact, I guess, about Kanban is that it's actually Japanese for signboard, which I think rings true with its process.
And before finishing our presentation, we do have an analogy just to help you remember what the Crystal Agile method is. So imagine you break this project into small parts called crystals. Each one of those crystals is a piece of the project that one person can work on, much like what we did with this project. Instead of focusing on the entire project or the entire crystal at once, you instead focus on one small crystal at a time. Each small crystal has a timeline or a deadline for it to be complete. By having various timelines, it helps the team stay organized and not get overwhelmed. It also allows your team to be more efficient by working on one part at a time rather than the entire thing at once. Teams can also work on a specific section and make sure it meets the requirements before moving on to another section. Constant communication with your team allows everyone to be on the same page while building a stronger team overall. Being able to adapt to any changes that come up during the project timeline is another way that allows for a more efficient experience. Since communication is highly valued with this Agile method, changes are always communicated and adjusted as a team. Before you know it, your project will be complete, just like we did with this project. We broke it down into smaller parts and broke the research down into smaller parts and then worked together to come up with the end project. I think that's a great analogy to help you guys remember what Crystal Agile method is.
Thanks for listening to us, and we hope that you've learned a little bit about the Crystal Agile method, and maybe someday you can implement it into a project you possibly are managing.